Buckle up, because this deep dive is about way more than just chrome and exhaust notes. We're talking Harley Davidson, a company that's basically woven into what America's all about.
Right. It really is iconic.
But can a brand that's so rooted in its history, keep going strong in the 21st century?
That is the million-dollar question. And we've got a wild ride ahead of us, over a century of their history to figure that out.
All right, so let's rewind all the way back to 1903, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. William S. Harley, the Davidson brothers, and a blueprint for a motorbicycle. It's crazy. I'm thinking about it now. It's almost like the start of a legend.
It really is amazing, though, when you think about it, how many huge, iconic companies, they got their start in these, makeshift spaces, right?
Yeah.
Garages, garden sheds, basements. There's just something about starting from scratch that seems to really get people being creative,
Totally. And for Harley Davidson, their story gets even wilder. They teamed up with Ole Evinrude.
Yeah.
Evinrude, the outboard motor guy, to get their first engine for their motorcycle. Talk about a power move right out of the gate.
It's true.
But get this, their very first model, it couldn't even make it up the hills in Milwaukee.
Guess start somewhere, right? And honestly, I think this little hiccup, it actually hints at something you see throughout Harley Davidson's whole story.
Mm-hmm.
They know how to take a setback and turn it into a comeback. By 1907, they came out with the V-twin engine.
Oh, yeah.
It was a game changer.
It still is. I mean, you think that engine. So what was it about that V-twin that made it such a phenomenon? Was it pure horsepower, or was there something more to it?
You hit it on the head with something more. It was this incredible combo of, yeah, you've got power, but it was also about the character of the engine. That distinct rumble, that low-end torque that riders just love, it all came together, and it quickly became the sound of the Harley-Davidson experience. And get this, police departments, they were some of the first to see how amazing it was.
Really? So those images you see of old school Harleys with the police badges and everything, that goes that far back? I had no clue.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It shows you how tough that engine was, but it also tells you about this early connection that Harley-Davidson built with law enforcement. And that connection is still going strong today. And then World War I happens, and they stepped up. They provided, get this, over 20,000 motorcycles to the military.
So they went from, not even being able to climb a hill to navigating actual battlefields. That's a heck of a way to prove what your machines can do.
No kidding. But, just like the open road, Harley's history, never completely smooth sailing. The 1930s hit, the Great Depression, and it was a whole new kind of challenge.
Yeah, the whole world felt that.
Yeah.
How did a company, especially one known for big, powerful, not exactly cheap motorcycles, how'd they weather that storm? What'd they do to survive?
They had to get seriously creative. Think outside the box. Lots of motorcycle companies, sadly, they didn't make it. But Harley Davidson, they got resourceful. They started making industrial power plants. Basically, using their expertise in engines, but for a completely different purpose.
So it was all about branching out. It's like, if you imagine a biker gang, but they've also got a side hustle going on.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Right.
They weren't done, though. They also unveiled the Servi car, a three-wheeled workhorse.
Oh, yeah.
Deliveries, all sorts of things. It became a really common sight.
They were really in it for the long haul, weren't they? From rugged individualism to dependable delivery service. They were ready to put in the work.
That's Harley Davidson for you. But here's where things get really interesting. They made a decision that, looking back, nobody could have predicted how it would play out. They signed this licensing deal with a Japanese company.
Oh, okay.
Basically, it gave this company access to Harley's technology, their manufacturing, the whole 9 yards.
And knowing what we know now about the motorcycle world,
Yeah.
that sounds like they might have accidentally created a competitor without realizing it.
Yeah, you could definitely say that. It made sense at the time. They needed to make moves. But it ended up setting the stage for some really intense competition down the road.
Oh.
And speaking of competition, World War II kicks off. Everything changes again. Harley Davidson, they're right back in the thick of it, making motorcycles to help out. This time it's the Allied forces. Tens of thousands of bikes. But here's where things get really interesting, all right? After the war, part of the deal, part of the reparations, they end up getting the design, the blueprints, for this small German motorcycle. The DKW RT-125.
Hold on, rewind that for a second.
Yeah.
We're talking about Harley Davidson, the kings of those big rumbling cruisers. They're building, what, a small German bike? That doesn't sound very Harley, does it?
It's true. They took that design and they actually built it. They called it the Hummer.
The Hummer.
The Hummer. Not exactly the first thing you picture when you think Harley, right? But here's the thing. It just shows you, Harley Davidson, they were always ready to adapt, to try new things, even if it meant going outside of what everyone expected from them.
So was the Hummer, was that their way of trying to, I don't know, reach a different kind of rider back then?
Exactly. Don't forget, back then, things were changing in the motorcycle world. People wanted something lightweight, something they could afford. And Harley Davidson, even though they had this big, powerful image, they were watching, they were paying attention.
It takes a special company to balance that legacy, that history, with being willing to experiment. Do we know if it worked? Did the Hummer end up being a success for them?
That's a good question. It's tough to say, honestly. The Hummer, it did okay, it sold all right, but it never became, like, legendary, you know? Like their other bikes, some folks even said it actually hurt the brand a little, made them seem less special.
Yeah.
But I look at it like this.
Yeah.
It shows that they were trying to keep up with a changing world.
Always walking that line. Tradition on one side, innovation on the other. It makes you wonder, with all the cultural shifts that were happening in like the 60s and 70s, the Japanese bikes coming onto the scene, a whole new generation of riders, and how they handle all that.
Oh man, that's a whole other chapter in their story. They were facing some real challenges from all sides, including from within the company itself. And then in 1969, they get bought out by the American Machine and Foundry. At first, it seemed like a good thing. Maybe it would shake things up in a good way, but it didn't really work out that way.
What happened? Were they just too different?
A little bit, yeah. AMF, they were all about big production, efficiency, you know, making as many motorcycles as possible, as cheaply as possible. And that led to some choices, some decisions that, looking back, they didn't really work out. They changed how they made the bikes, tried to streamline things. And yeah, people lost jobs because of it. And the bikes themselves, the quality wasn't the same anymore.
That's rough. Sounds like a classic case of caring more about the bottom line than about the things that made the brand mean something in the first place.
Yeah.
The craft, the details, the care they used to be known for.
Yeah. And Harley riders, the people who loved those bikes, they noticed. That's when those nicknames started popping up. Harley Davidson, stuff like that.
Oof, yeah. That's gotta hurt.
It really hurt their image. It became clear that AMF, they just didn't get it. They'd lost touch with what made Harley Davidson special, what made people love them.
It really shows you, even the biggest names, the legends, they can stumble if they forget what got them there. So by the late 70s, early 80s, how bad was it? Were they in danger of disappearing completely?
It was bad, no doubt. They were at a crossroads, no two ways about it. It was make or break time. Honestly, a lot of folks, they weren't sure if Harley could bounce back from this one. But, like we've been talking about, Harley Davidson, they always had a knack for surprises, and they were about to pull off one of their biggest comebacks yet.
So they're on the ropes, huh? A company that basically represents freedom in America, and they're barely holding on. What do they do?
Well, that's when this group of investors, they show up, and they're led by Von Beals and Willie G. Davidson.
Willie G. Davidson, wait, as in?
Grandson of one of the original founders, yeah. And they come in with this plan. They want to save Harley Davidson, but they knew it wasn't just about saving a company, it was about saving a whole legacy.
Wow. That's a mission. It's like a whole different ballgame. So what was their big idea? How do you even start to fix something like that?
They knew they had to win back the people who loved Harley Davidson the most, their loyal customers.
Right.
And to do that, they needed to make amazing motorcycles again, quality over everything. So they restructured the whole company, invested in some cutting-edge technology. But then, and this is kind of surprising, they really leaned into that classic Harley image.
Oh, interesting.
Instead of trying to be like those super sleek Japanese bikes that were everywhere,
Right.
they went back to their roots. They embraced that retro look.
That's ballsy.
Yeah.
But then again, Harley's always been about a certain feeling, a certain look. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That toughness, the American spirit. It's part of the package.
Exactly. And the crazy thing is, it worked. 1984, they come out with the Softail.
Boom.
Instant classic. And then you've got the Fat Boy in 1990.
Oh, man. The Fat Boy. Now, that is a Harley Davidson motorcycle.
Right. It was like they took that classic Harley style, but gave it a modern edge. And those bikes, they brought Harley Davidson roaring back to the top.
You know what's funny?
What's that?
Remember earlier we were talking about that Harley Davidson sound? That rumble?
Oh, yeah.
They actually tried to trademark it. Like, officially.
They did. Can you believe that?
They tried to own a sound.
They were serious. It didn't work out in the end.
Probably for the best.
But it just goes to show you how much they associate their brand, their identity with that sound, that experience.
That's wild. I mean, you're right. It's more than just a motorcycle. It's this whole feeling, this whole lifestyle. People get really into it.
They do. And even now in the 21st century, they've still got challenges. There's that big strike. And then they bought and then sold MV Agusta, that Italian company.
Oh, right.
And then, of course, the whole world kind of went sideways back in
The
2008.
economy crashed, yeah.
Harley Davidson's had to adapt again and again to keep going.
That's got to take some serious grit to keep going through all that.
It does. They've even started making electric motorcycles. Can you imagine that?
It's a bold move for a company known for, well, for being loud.
Right. But Harley's always been about pushing the limits, doing things their own way.
So where does that leave them now? What's next for Harley Davidson?
Honestly, who knows? They've come such a long way. From that little shed in Milwaukee to a global brand, it's an amazing story. Pure American ingenuity. They fall down, they get back up, and they just keep riding.
It's a wild ride, that's for sure. Highs, lows, the whole deal.
Yeah.
But they're still here. And it seems like Harley Davidson's story is far from over.
I think you're right.
Well, this has been awesome. Thanks for taking this trip down memory lane with me, talking Harley Davidson. It's a really incredible story.
My pleasure. I always enjoy it.
And for everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you on the next one.